It's Thompson to Clark, and as you can tell, that is not Brad Evans if you are watching on video. Brad is on vacation. He's at Disneyland hanging out with the fam. And so my first option to get someone in here in lieu of Brad, he said yes. Darren Chan, San Francisco Giants radio engineer. What is up, my friend?
Double G, it's good to be with you here. What did Brad just take off now that we have a radio affiliate in Reno? He decided to just cash it in.
He did. He did ask me. I said, hey, DC's going to be on. What do you want me to ask him? And there will be a Reno radio question at some point coming in here. So we'll save that. We'll save that as we get closer to the end. But this is fun because we just got through the World Baseball Classic, so more eyes are on the opening part of the season than usual, I would imagine, just because of that tournament and the focus on some of the players from that tournament. How much of the World Baseball Classic did you watch?
I watched as much as I could. Surprisingly, I'm a guy who was kind of down on it maybe years ago when it first was implemented. I just thought it was, I don't know. To me, it was like spring training is there for guys to get in shape, and then all of a sudden we're casting some of the best players. We want to cast some of the best players in the world to immediately play in these clutch, crucial games. But over the years, I've got more interest as long as there is star power in these games. And I think with the U.S. team, especially, we saw that with a lot of big name, household name players playing. I watched watching pool play from around the world. I wasn't up in the middle of the night watching the games in the Asia pool, but obviously I was tracking what was going on with Japan and how they were steamrolling everybody in that pool. And I tell you what, I watched the semifinals and the semifinals, the U.S. Versus Puerto Rico and the Mexico-Japan game. And obviously that Mexico-Japan game was so exciting leading into last night's game with the U.S. and Japan. And boy, oh boy, I tell you what, everyone was speculating as to how exciting a potential matchup with Trout and Ohtani facing each other in the ninth. And to have that actually happen, that is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, you could nitpick and say, like, well, if they had runners, runner in scoring position, all he needed was maybe a single would have driven in the tying run. But just to have that matchup and to see the nasty filth that Ohtani was throwing, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that matchup was just, you couldn't have written a better end, at least for Japan. I think for the U.S., you kind of hope that Trout just gets on base, any sort of way. And it's not like Ohtani got him to chase anything. Like, there were two fastballs pretty much right down the middle that he was just like, hey man, like, if you can hit it, like, go for it. And Trout swung through both of them. Yeah. And that's what I was most surprised about, because Mike Trout, how rarely does Mike Trout missing a fastball like that happen? But there's some talk, and I think it was Michael Young who was saying, I wish we would have had Trout in midseason form. And I'm like, yeah, but what's the excuse for Ohtani, who looked like he was every bit of in midseason form, not only pitching, but hitting? Like, this dude destroyed baseballs. So I don't know if I necessarily buy that excuse, but I understand it. And we only have to harken back, and I say only, and now as I think about it, we're past 30 years here, but how the Dream Team in 1992 kind of created the NBA as this giant international sport, or it kind of kickstarted it.
Sure.
And I think the whole key to this tournament is getting the U.S. players to decide to play. And Trout saying, "Yep, I'm in. I'm going to be the captain." That was what was presented to him, and him saying yes. That goes so far into getting the eyeballs on this thing. I saw a number, and look, Japan is already a great place for baseball. They did something like 62 million households for the game against Korea, I read, and that's ridiculous. We don't, the only time that there's that many households on anything out here is for the Super Bowl. So that was tremendous, and I just hope that we can keep doing this. I know that it's not etched in stone that it's just going to keep going on and on and on. but I
Yeah.
Manfred said that he does believe that they're going to do it because this is probably the most interest I would guess that they've ever had. And now Team USA is like, this is like 1988 and Team USA basketball, the bronze medal. It's like, hey, we
Yeah.
got to come back. We got to bring our best in. The,
Yeah.
the the problem with Team USA is that they just didn't have any of really good starters. That they didn't have a Verlander to come in and shut down a team in the ninth inning like Team Japan had with
Mhm.
Otani, or just to throw out your best guys. But ultimately, I thought such a great tournament. Such a I know there's some people trying to say that it wasn't that big of a deal and blah 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 blah. But I just really like the international stuff where you get your best competing against someone else's best, and just a fun tournament, even if Team USA lost.
Yeah, I come from the old school where I'm of the belief that the Olympics should be the showcase of the best athletes in the world from every country possible. And whether or not they're pro athletes, to me it doesn't matter. I know people believe that it takes away some of the shine from the amateurs when when we do that. But I'll tell you what, the you mentioned the dream team in 92 and how that put Olympic basketball back on the map. I will say this: in all the different incarnations of the Dream Team and the subsequent teams that followed, uh, they didn't deserve to have the moniker Dream Team to me because that team was literally a dream to put Magic and Jordan and Bird on the same team, and that was phenomenal. And back to what I was saying with baseball, it's all about the star power. If you're going to do this, you're going to have the superstars commit to playing. I really think that that's key here because we don't want to see, and I say this with respect, we don't want to see just the average baseball player on there. We want to see the people that make the all-star teams come together and play for one team as a united front for whatever country they designate their origin from. So I think that's a lot of fun in putting this together. And boy, I tell you what, let's just say for instance that Otani didn't play. Would the interest be there this time around if he didn't play? What if he was out next time? That would not garner the interest it did this time. I think it might be a fashionable thing to say like, oh, it's who cares about this tournament? It's all made by baseball. Yeah, well, they tried something different when the Olympics decided that baseball was out and they wanted to showcase because baseball has become such a global sport over the last couple of decades. So I think it's a great thing. And I'm really afraid, Garen, and I'm scared that owners or GMs might be a little more hesitant on letting their superstars play because of the freak injuries that have
Yeah.
happened during this tournament. Um, I hope that doesn't happen because that would just take away. That's one of those. Well, maybe we shouldn't go outside because we might, trip on a curb and fall down, and then what do you say? Never step outside again.
Well,
Um,
see, baseball doesn't have this problem, which the NBA does, which is the idea of pickup basketball runs, right? I think I forgot. I think there was a love of the game clause that was maybe was it in Michael Jordan's something. There was some love of the game clause that somebody put in a contract, basically saying you can't tell me that I can't play basketball because I love to play basketball. And baseball doesn't really have that. It's not like you have 10 guys that you can just go, hey, let's go to the park and play baseball. There's so much into it, whereas you don't have that pickup aspect of it.
mhm,
So that is a difference, but I do worry the same as you because of Diaz and Altuve
mhm,
getting hurt. And you saw some of the players like Logan Webb. I don't think he didn't want to participate because of fear of injury. I think he really wanted to be around this club in spring training. He sees himself as a leader now. But I'm sure there were other guys who decided, I have a lot of wear and tear here. Let's just put all efforts into the season. Clayton Kershaw. I know he was supposed to pitch in WBC and decided not to. So, but at the same time, you can look at it and go, did Japan hold Otani out? Like, no, like he wanted to play, and maybe
yeah.
that's just the way we should just leave it up to the players, and maybe the owners can get something in the contract that kind of protects them a little bit. But I think this tournament it sort of needs to continue to stay, because you had a dialogue around baseball at the beginning of the spring that isn't normally around baseball. So I feel like if some of the stories connect, and you got the Giants opening in New York for the first time ever, with the
Yeah.
interleague play being what it is. So I think there's some momentum here, and as long as the baseball doesn't shoot themselves in the foot with the new rules and all, like, there is discussion here around the sport. Thank you, WBC. Thank you somewhat of these rule changes and the interleague play. So
Yeah.
let's just take that momentum and let's run with it, man. I
Yeah.
want to I want to see if this helps at all.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if this will motivate more players to join up in 3 years, to play, I really wanna be a part of this. That looked really fun. There were sellout crowds everywhere. That was exciting, versus the ones that are saying like, I'm a little scared, something might happen." So hopefully that the former outweighs the latter, because I would just love to see more superstars playing, and baseball cannot be more in a more of a running start heading into this season now, with it's just being the mainstream news with this baseball tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's actually talk about spring training, because I was in Scottsdale last weekend on Saturday. Got to see some Giants Cubbies, and I was reminded how fantastic Scottsdale Park is, or Scottsdale Stadium, or whatever they
Yeah.
call it. Like, what a fun place to go watch a baseball game. I was telling my kids, so me and my youngest, who's still at U of A, he'll walk this spring, and he'll be done. And my parents are still out there though, so I was
Mhm.
with my son and my dad, and I reminded my youngest. I said, the last time we were in this ballpark was in March of 2010. So I hadn't
Wow.
actually been to Scottsdale since before the Giants even won their World Series from 2010. Not saying that, I'm going to bring in some good luck here with the team or anything, but like, that's how long it had been. And then when I get back there, it's like, oh wow, like, I remember everything from that first time being there. It's just so fun. And I know it's really expensive now to go to spring training, as I
Yeah.
saw by some of the flights that were headed that way. But it just kind of reminds you of the beginning, the new beginning, and baseball still has that more so than any other sport, which is last year is over. This is the new beginning of the new year. Everyone starts 0-0. Like, when I don't know how many games that you did in the spring this year, but do you have the same sort of feeling as a fan, and as someone who's engineering these games?
Yeah, absolutely. I still look forward to going to spring training. Now, I hadn't been down there, since last time I was there was in late February, early March of 2020. So I did the last series of games there right before the shutdown, and I have really haven't been there. I've been coordinating. We would hire a local engineer to cover our games. The Giants, we only do a total of 15 spring training games, and because of those 15 spring training games, they don't have me down there full time, which is fine because there's a lot of stuff to attend to back here at the home ballpark, and as we set up and gear up for the regular season.
Right.
And our broadcasts are not as extensive as they are in the regular season. We only run a 15-minute pregame and about a 5 to 10 minute post. You're kind of in and out. And so the production in terms of the directing and the number of live reads or spots, promotional announcements, they're not as fluid as they are, not as frequent as you would see in the regular season. But to get back to your original question about spring training, and I'm going to give this advice to anybody who's been contemplating going down to spring training for years, what to do. The thing is, it is in an entirely different atmosphere because of the casualness of it, the smaller crowds. You're going to top out no more than around 10,000 for Scottsdale Stadium. And you have to remember that any other ballpark in the Cactus League is no more than probably an hour away. I think the farthest one would be in Goodyear. Scottsdale is the premier destination if you're going to visit Phoenix and the Valley. I remember when I was with the Angels, we would have to you do we Angels did all 30 spring training games, which is kind of brutal, but would drive. We would have to take that hour and a half drive down to Tucson and do games at Tucson Electric Park or High Corbett Field. And I felt like an eternity to get down and
Yeah.
getting down there. And then after the broadcast, you're tired and you have to drive about 90 minutes back, barring no traffic. But here, even if the Giants aren't playing at Scottsdale, you're a short drive away from Mesa. You're a short drive away from Talking Stick. I mean, heck, you're probably less than 5 minutes away from Talking Stick in Scottsdale. The Royals and the Rangers are out in Surprise. That's under an hour. Peoria with the Padres and the Mariners, they're there. So you're going to get a plethora of games to choose from, even if the Giants aren't playing, and then you get the split squad games. But in terms of what you can see at Scottsdale Stadium, get your tickets early, get a blanket, sit on the berm, enjoy that, or sit in the stands. And the only thing that used to really worry me, because it's just before the Nets went down the lines, what used to worry me was the seats are so close to home plate and to the bases, there's not a lot of foul territory. There used to be screaming foul balls that went into the stands at Scottsdale Stadium. Not anymore, which is fine because you got the protective netting, which is
Right.
definitely justified in my book, because I've seen way too many bad accidents over the years of people getting beamed by baseballs. So it was definitely a big need. And if I could throw a tangent here, I remember when the Nets first went up in the big leagues and people were complaining about how, oh, this is going to affect my sight line. I don't like it because now I'm seeing a net. Look, you're gonna notice the net for just a few minutes, and then you're gonna forget it's there. And
Yeah.
don't forget, the most important people that need to see the at home plate, besides the players and the umpires and the coaches, the ones that are behind the net are the broadcasters. And the broadcasters have been for decades sitting behind a backstop that has netting. So you forget it's there. If you pay attention to it, you're going to do that, which can be said, of course, about all the new rule changes.
Yep.
That all these new rule changes you'll pay attention to in the beginning, but I don't know if you noticed it or not, Garrett, but after a while, when the game settles in, you kind of forget it's there.
As long as there's no interruptions, which the pitch clock, sometimes there is, because I think it's still such a new rule that both pitchers and hitters are getting adjusted to it, and I'm sure umpires as well. I find that rule to be maybe the best rule change that they've made in I don't know how long, because these games move, and there's the problem. It's not that big of a problem when you're going to the games, I don't think, but as a TV sport, baseball can super elongate, and it's just those games can be so long, they can be so delayed for no reason, that people can even realize whatever it is, pitching changes or stepping out on every opportunity to I guess kind of make the pitcher wait on you or whatever. So yeah, I like the idea of a pitch clock, because it just makes so much sense when it comes to speeding up the baseball game in spots where you don't need it to be slow. It's just not necessary for the game to be super slow when it is. And now this pitch clock seems to figure that situation out. And then there's the thing with the pickoffs to first. Now, I don't really see it as a giant problem, um, of late, but there were times when there was more stolen bases, to where you'd see, you definitely see the pickoffs and trying to hold runners. But because stolen bases haven't really been that big of a deal in in recent memory, um, I don't know if that one was needed, but I guess it would be a way for the starting or the pitchers to kind of game the pitch clock, is just by constantly throwing over and throwing, and that's why they have it. So um otherwise, I'm just I'm actually kind of happy with the pitch clock overall and with the way that they did that. But DC, I know you kind of went out of the picture there. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I heard everything you said. So, and I completely agree with some of the rule changes. Look, this is nothing that I'm breaking. That's new in terms of the philosophy and
I think he cut out again. We're having an internet problem that we'll fix here as he gets connected. Um, once we get back to we'll get back to DC here in a second. I think I think he's back now. All right, go
okay.
for it.
Apologies there. No, I think a lot of the in terms of what you were talking about regarding the rule changes. Look, it's something that was needed. The game had evolved to so many to kind of glacial speeds, and it's not good for the game. How we've evolved to the norm being of like 3 hours and 10-minute games, and the games that were 2 hours and 40 minutes being the exceptions. It look it was something that baseball tried to remedy over the years with various things, mound visits. That was a big thing.
Yep.
That was something that they tried to enforce. Now you could argue that these rules were always on the books in terms of pitching, but they were rarely enforced, and there was not an electronic method of enforcement. So I think what shocks a lot of people on the onset is that there is not just the pitch clock, but there's this whole slew of different rules that we are now changing for a sport that's over 125 years old, that moved at really slow adaptation speeds. Now we're getting bigger bases, banning the shift, pitching, throwovers. So we have all these different things that we're trying to focus on to make the game better. And I think by forcing the players and the coaches and the managers to change the style, to pick up the pace, we still have the great game of baseball, but it's now played at a pace that's so much more enjoyable to everyone. And to
Here's
everyone out there that said, well, I miss those. I when I watch a baseball game, I don't want to have it on a timer. Well,
right.
guess what? Every announcer that was a former player that I've talked to over the years is for the rule changes. You would
Yeah.
think those guys would be the hardest of the hardcore, old school. Let's not change a thing. Why are we implementing a clock? No, across the board, everyone is for it. And one of the big guys, two guys that absolutely have been begging for this are Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper, who have been saying this for years. We need to get this back to where it was. And I think the benefits of a lot of the things that are going on with especially the bigger bases is that, and baseball is hoping to do this, is they're going to have a lot more base stealing, a lot more action around the bases. And I think that is fantastic because baseball did their due diligence. They put these rules in place in the minors, and then they took the feedback from the players and the managers, front office, and they saw what worked and what didn't work. They didn't just like baseball didn't just say like, okay, well, here's what we're going to do, Players Association. We're going to do this, that, and that. No, they presented everything with evidence, with research, and the Players Association signed off on it because it works.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good deal.
Here's a question though, and this is one of the criticisms that I've read about this, which is if you're going to make some changes, why didn't you make them a little bit more incrementally? Why did they all have to happen at once? And the one that I think I understand is so if we limit the pickoffs to first base and we are sort of encouraging, maybe runners to be a little bit more active, did we need to do the bigger bases at the same time, or could we have done an experiment to see if stolen bases were going to be up just because you're kind of limiting the pitcher's ability to throw back to that bag, or did we need both to kind of put this new focus on base running again and really just blow it up?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think it's let's blow it up. Let's do all these changes because the hindsight or flipping the script on not having all these rule changes all at once would be to slow roll these rule changes every year or every other year
Yeah.
for the next couple of years. And then at that point, it almost draws more attention to it that baseball just can't settle down. Boy, they started with the pitch clock, and 2 years later, it's bigger bases. 2 years later, they're getting rid of the shift, and I think what they decided was, "Hey, look, we're making some wholesale changes, some big changes to the game. Let's just go all in as much as we can without having to make it, little too crazy." And one of the things that baseball studied in their minor league research was they knew that the players gave them feedback on how long it took the minor leaguers to adapt to new rules such as the pitch clock. So they presented all these hundreds of players gave their feedback, and they baseball found that in the 30-day period, that was the average time it took for a minor leaguer to get adapted to the new rules. So baseball said, perfect. This is the perfect length for spring training for these to test out the rules so that when opening day comes around, this stuff will not be foreign to anybody. So again, back to the research. Baseball studied this. It just happened to be 30 days, which is ideal. Some guys are just going to have to, still deal with it as we come along here during the season. But I tell you what, I am so excited, more so this season than I am for any past season, only because the game itself is, I think, across the board, is going to be so much more fun.
Mhm. I agree with you. Now, we'll talk about one more thing, and then we can move on. The shift banning, to me, just banning it completely, and putting some rules in place as to how you can, maybe, you have to be this, you can't cross over this side of the field or whatever. I do wonder though, because this is a rule sort of against analytics, and we know baseball is a heavy analytics sport. It's
Sure.
like, here's what the analytics are, and this is why we're doing this, and every time Brandon Belt hits a sharp ground ball through the right side, it gets gobbled up because the right field or the second baseman is playing in right field. Like, I get all of those things. I just wonder if by doing it the way that they did, all it does is invite more creativity with the analytics. Like, I immediately, when Brad and I first talked about this rule, the first thing I said is, well, you know what they're going to do? They're going to pull one of the outfielders, and they're going to put the outfield right where the second baseman used to be able to be, and that's how
Right.
they're going to kill the Joey Gallos of the world.
Yeah.
And they did that, like, one of the first spring training games. I think I saw a team do that.
Yeah.
And the other side will say, well, you're opening up the outfield, but the batters are so conditioned to swing the way that they swing no matter what. I
Right.
still think that kind of shifting is going to work, and then they're going to have to come up with another rule that says, okay, now we need all three outfielders in the outfield. Like that. That's the problem I see with this rule. I
Mhm.
understand it from the perspective of, fans are used to certain things being hits, and they are not hits anymore. And the only way to counterbalance this thing is to hit the ball over the fence. I
Yeah.
get all of that stuff, but I do think that it's just going to invite more creativity around trying to sort of escape the rule.
Yeah. I mean, hasn't that been baseball's inside mantra for years? It's just
Yeah.
kinda like, we're gonna find an inside edge. We don't know what it is, but we're gonna discover it. And we do it, everyone else is gonna copy us too as
Giants
well.
do that really well, right?
Yeah.
Farhan and the coaching staff, they do that really well in the whole league. They do some things that things will eventually be copied.
I remember a couple years ago, and you probably do too. I think it was Tampa Bay started with the opener.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we're
Oh
having a
yeah.
closer start the game? What
Oh
this
yeah.
is unbelievable. And now it's become almost a regular thing in baseball with every team implementing an opener on the 5th day when we don't have a starter going,
Yeah.
or we wanna have just a bullpen day. I mean, those things were kind of unheard of years ago. But again, evolution. We're gonna find an edge. And whether or not they're gonna ban a 5-man infield, I don't think that will happen. But like you said, if it shows that it's just killing a rally or something like that, I think baseball will figure it out. I think there's certainly a disadvantage to just having a 2-man outfield, even if you're playing left center, right center. because a good hitter will find a way to get the ball over.
But it just makes me think the Joey Gallos of this world are just screwed, because he is a certain style of hitter,
Yeah.
and a lot of these defenses are based to get people like him out, and he may not be a good enough hitter to figure. Like, if you look at Will Clark and I know Will Clark was on one of the morning shows, and this was sometime last year when I heard it, and I'm like, Will Clark is the wrong person to talk about with this, because Will Clark was a good enough hitter to look at where the defense was and go, okay, I'm just going to hit it where they're not. Like, I'm
Right.
just that good. Joey Gallo, and I'm just using Joey Gallo, not picking on him. I'm just using him as the archetype of the player that who they're getting out with this rule. He's not Will Clark, and so it's really hard for him to go, oh yeah, they're gonna pitch me this way, and I need to take this ball up the middle instead of dead pulling it like I always do. And then he's just hitting into outs when he probably feels like, I really hit that ball well, but it doesn't
Mhm.
show up. So I do worry a little bit about that, but a Will Clark or a Tony Gwynn would look at the defenses and go, yeah, do whatever the hell you want, because we're just going to hit it where you're not, and we're going to be fine, and we'll probably even be better hitters
Yeah.
because of your gimmicky defense. But that's not really how a lot of the baseball is played today on the offensive side.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that a lot of players just refuse to adapt to the defensive positioning like probably they used to. I mean, we often, how many times did we see Brandon Belt come to bat and everything's stacked to the right side, and you're like, I mean, yeah, you could lay down a bunt right now, but look at this gap. If only these batters just learn to go the other way.
Yeah.
But I think at this level, a lot of players are sticking with what they got them there, and it's their comfort zone to beat the shift, to figure that out, to hit it to right field if they're a right field hitter, a pull hitter down the line if you're a lefty. So it's frustrating in that sense. I don't think we're going to get there though. But maybe that's just an optimism in me. I think a guy like a guy like Joey Gallo is going to have great numbers from the power end of things,
Yeah.
and no matter what, and that's what he's there for. Whether or not a team wants to have him position him so that they're willing to give up a simple base hit or something like that, that's an entirely different story.
You know who you can blame for all of this, really, if we want to go all the way back? Now, I'm sure people can go, oh, there's even further, but you can blame Barry Bonds, because he was so great, and he was able to lay off pitches that he didn't think that he could crush. Barry would go oppo every once in a while,
Yeah.
just sort of depending, but he was so great. And so all of a sudden, players would get rewarded for being such OBP monsters. So you look at Belt and you're like, okay, well, Belt doesn't really have to sit on that outside pitch and look to go the other way with it, because he's just going to take that pitch, and he trusts his eye that if that pitch kind of goes a little bit more inside, that's the one he's going to wail on. And he would take a called third strike on the outside corner that he didn't like. And some fans would be down on him, but I'm sure his coaches would be like, yep, that was fine. You weren't going to be able to hit that ball over the fence, so you don't have to swing at it. He's going to walk a lot of times anyways. But I think that it's just the mentality of, someone like Belt. He's being rewarded for having a great eye, but he's also not getting disciplined, for lack of a better term, for not going the other way, because the mentality is you need to swing at things that you can hit over the fence. And I think that's the main difference in today's game versus, the game that we grew up on in the 80s. Now, it's not to say that those players also didn't do that. Wade Boggs is another great example, right? He would take walks, and
Mhm.
fans would get mad because, dude, you got runners in scoring position. And he's like, but why would I swing myself into an out?
Yeah.
I'm just going to take the walk and then leave the person, up behind me to do it. And then they would, probably ground out or something. And that's why the fans were mad. But I just think it's a different mentality. And this all comes from analytics and studying the game and the game evolving, like you said. And, baseball, at least you can say at its core is still baseball. Like, I watch the NFL, and I'm not as big of an NFL fan as I am a 49ers fan. I just can't stop watching the Niners because
Yeah.
it's just in me. But you watch today's football, and if you watch a tape of the 1984, NFC Championship game, it's a different sport altogether.
Mhm.
It's almost unrecognizable in certain aspects because they just protect the quarterback so much now, and you can't grab receivers like you used to. So at
Mhm.
least when it comes to evolution of the game, I think you're right that baseball is still true to baseball. Though, we can't argue with football in that they're still like the biggest game in town.
Yeah, totally. And just to touch on something you talked about with Bonds, uh, and this is drawing back to Otani. Dave Fleming sent me a text yesterday before yesterday's championship game. Dave's been doing a lot of games with
Yeah, I've been watching him on FS1 and such.
FS1, and he's been doing the games on the international feed for this championship game as well as the semifinals. And he was there for batting practice, obviously, yesterday in Miami. And he sent a text out and he said Otani was hitting balls further than what he saw Bonds hitting back in the heyday. I mean, he was just I think he was just flabbergasted as to the power that Shohei has. Um, but back to what you were saying, aside from the Bond stuff, and the game has changed. And let's talk about like a little bit of the way the games when we were watching it. I think I would say when I say we, as kids growing up, we saw a lot more balls in play. We saw
Yeah.
a lot more stolen bases, which I think are such an exciting part of the game that just just kind of like evaporated over the years.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. And I think baseball is really excited about bringing that aspect of the game back because I think that's so exciting for fans to have more action. Also, turning double plays now because of banning the shift. We're gonna have more teams playing a double play depth.
No
Where we
Evan
turn-
Longoria taking a throw to turn a double play
yeah,
because
exactly,
he's
right.
shaded so far.
Exactly, yeah. So I think for the guys that like seeing double plays, that's going to be back too. So those will be back, and pitchers pitching into ground balls. I think that stuff is all going to play into it too. It'll be so much fun because there are so many ways that we're going to be able to return back to having this be baseball in the main vernacular of pro sports and mainstream of how we proceed here in the spring and summer.
This is a fascinating tangent that we've gone on, and I'm so glad. When I write stuff down as far as here's kind of what I want to talk about. My hope is that we just take the conversation into somewhere fun, and this is a fantastic part that I didn't even think about, which is when you talk about the evolution of the game, and you brought it up, just the evolving. Baseball was more fun pre home run era.
Mhm.
And I think some people will say, well, the home runs were great and chicks dig the long ball and all that stuff. And I absolutely agree. Like the popularity was through the roof at that point. People were following Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. It brought
Mhm.
the sport back to a sense, in a sense, because of the strike from a couple years before. But the foundation of baseball pre home run era was a much more fun game. And what happened during the home run era, we can call it also the steroid era, which is the players saw what would happen if you're Mark McGwire and you're already have so much power and you just took it to another level and all of a sudden you're one of the most famous athletes in the
Mhm.
world, and people saw that and were like, whoa, what is he doing that I'm not doing? And that kind of created, the next 10 years or whatever of what the sport became. But if
Mhm.
you go back to right before that time frame, you got Griffey, you got Bonds, and those guys are dominating from a more athletic level than just from a power level. And it'd be amazing to go, and maybe they do this. Maybe part of I forget the guy that they hired to kind of change up the game, or I'm sure there's a team of people, but to go back and go, can we get back to 1993
Mhm.
rather than can we get back to 1997? Because
Mhm.
if we can get back to 1993, then the athlete is paramount, and the style of baseball is different now. We're not gonna, we're still not gonna be bunting runners over and giving each other up, because that's been proven to be maybe not the best strategy in
Very
creating
debatable,
runs.
yeah.
Yeah, it's debatable. But I think most of the teams sort of feel that it's not the best way. Maybe the percentages don't even out for the sacrifices.
Mhm.
But I would love to see, because I'm in high school in the early '90s, and I'm I would say I'm a bigger baseball fan from the overall sport of baseball in the 1990s. And now today, I'm a Giants fan. In order to do a show like this, you kind of have to be almost obsessive about the news and the information and the games. But from an overall of like, do I want to watch, Rangers versus Twins on a Tuesday night? Today in my life, I may not even read a box score about that
Yeah.
game. But in the early '90s, I'm probably watching Sports Center or watching Baseball Tonight, or keeping up with, who was playing in that game and which pitcher, went 7 strong or whatever. That is a game that I think is a little bit more enticing, for me as a fan. And but I don't know, it may be different for other people. Maybe other people just want the long ball. Maybe the Aaron Judge chase of last year is kind of what everyone wants every year. I don't know. What about you?
Well, I think the Judge story last year was, obviously something that just captivated baseball, but I think that's obviously the exception more than the norm. You know, I go back to when you talked about like baseball being pre-steroid era, um, when Bonds won the MVP with the Giants in that magical '93 season, when I think he batted 340, 323, 326, 46 home runs, I don't know, 130 RBI. Uh, Maybe we get to see more of those type of players rather than, and stolen bases too. Remember when 30-30 was a big thing, and then the 40-40 happened, where you're demonstrating power and speed all in one player. Whereas opposed to in the last couple years, because of the home run ball, the number of strikeouts
Mm-hmm.
climaxed in baseball year over year. And I think with the home run and guys swinging for the fences came with all the strikeouts. And to me, I don't think that's the good trade-off. I don't think it's all or nothing. That to me, that's a temporary happiness when you're just sitting there waiting for the home run. If we can generate runs by moving runners along, and whether or not you want to sacrifice the guy over to second and create, give up one out, or you can get him in a position where now maybe he can be able to steal the base at second, or go the other way with the runners on the move. So I think that brand of baseball is definitely more exciting. And in terms of everything else that you talked about, like the old school way of working the counts, getting walks, and um, a- and and to go off on a side tangent like you talked about, because
I
it
love
brings
it.
it like popping in my head as we talk about here. It's a shame that the analytics, as great as they are, and the amount of statistical information that are at our fingertips now, that we have somehow devalued the Triple Crown stats.
Yeah.
That yeah, that the batting average is not as important as on base, not the on base, but OPS,
Mm-hmm.
which I totally get to some extent. Or RBIs are a factor of your teammates, and how your team's performing, and your home runs are your home runs. That may change slightly, but it doesn't certainly devalue the numbers that are there. So because we only have a handful of people who have accomplished that, who won those Triple Crown titles, I think it speaks volumes still on how difficult it is to achieve that. But at the same time, there are all these new stats up there. Heck, you go to the scoreboard at Oracle Park, we probably have more XFIP and other stat lines up on the board that none of us even couldn't even keep track of, all these numbers. And
Yeah.
so I think for a lot of the stat guys, they love to do that, and there are a lot of percentage of players or fans that do that, but you have to remember that the general fan does not know the XFIP or any of those, or they don't care about what is a good spin rate. How many RPMs? That doesn't mean anything as to somebody saying you're a 300 hitter. If I say you're a
Yeah.
300 hitter, you know exactly that person's is a good hitter or having a
Yeah.
good season.
Yeah. 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 No, getting the uh, common fan to understand who's good just
Mhm.
based off of a quick 20-second discussion is somewhat missing, I think, for from the game, except for the home runs,
Yeah,
because that's what you can say is the home
yeah.
runs piece. Speaking of somebody who can probably calculate the xFIP on a piece of paper with a pencil, Farhan is in the is this the last year of his original deal that he signed with the
I
Giants?
believe so, yes.
So in this when he came on board, obviously he had a great resume of being able to work under some folks. And how would you, as a fan, and I know this is kind of hard to take out off of to take yourself out of also working for the team, but as a fan, the 107 win season was, I think, the thing that you can circle and say these are the things that he's doing really, really well. But the other 3 seasons kind of say a little bit differently, and I was kind of wondering where you fit with Farhan. And then also, I mean, I have some expectation that I would like to see him continue what he's been doing, and let's give him some more space to continue building, because so many things when you do this are outside of his power, of people getting injured or whatever. And I would really like to see this whole, these last 4 years heading into this season. I want to see a few more years of what he's done to see what, the ultimate vision. Can we get to what his ultimate vision is? But where do you sit with that?
Well, 2 years ago, I remember going into the 2021 season, people were saying, when is Farhan gonna turn this thing around? What do we got here? And the thing I kept hearing was, "Trust the process. It's gonna take time, but trust the process." And then in 21 with the 107 wins, it came true. Um, so everything was just golden. And last year was obviously everything just kind of fell apart, and he still managed a 500 team in the end. By the way, first time that franchise history that team has finished exactly with an 81-81 record. It's just crazy to think about. But when we literally say it's a 500 team, it's a 500 team. I would like to see Farhan extended, because I think a baseball brain like him is hard to find, and I do trust the process because I have seen it in person when
Yep.
this team could not lose 2 years ago, and then injuries happen, things just don't pan out as they do a year later. So let's see what this year brings. The tap into the free agent market, it wasn't without trying.
Yeah.
They were in the conversation with Bryce Harper, in the conversation with Aaron Judge. Um, it's
Had Carlos Correa, like, you
had
can actually
Carlos
give
Correa,
them that one, right?
and
Until they didn't.
this team got so much crap for that after doing the physicals and not deciding to sign him, and they were vindicated by the Mets because the Mets found the same thing.
Yeah.
Uh, there were alarm bells with Correa. So it wasn't like the Giants are not trying to dip their hands in the expensive free agent pool, because they are, which brings us back to Otani at some point.
Okay, this is where I was hoping we were going.
Okay, so are we going to see a 500 million person, a $50 million a year player, a $500 million contract guy? I said, watch Tiger years ago. I said Tiger Woods is going to be our first $1 billion athlete, and the way Otani is playing right now, I tell you what, he's going to be very close to getting that $500 million contract, which is just, I mean, for guys like you and I growing up, it was like, I remember when I was a kid, Dave Winfield becoming the first $2 million man, and
Yeah.
that was a big deal. And Ricky Henderson being a $3 million guy. And now we have $500 million in play coming up for this guy. I don't see how the Giants, and that's a quick question. Do you think the Giants are in play for an Otani? I think you have to kick the tires at least. You have to look at all the factors involved here. But there's no doubt that I would not be surprised if the Giants weren't in the conversation this coming off season, or heck, look, depending on where the Giants are in the middle of the season too, and where the Angels are too as well. I know Artie Moreno has stated that he thinks he's not going to be traded because he doesn't want to give up a talent like that. But I tell you what, if the Angels are out of it, and by the way, how many more years are they going to be out of it with Trout and Ohtani on the same team? But
well, that's what was so that's what was so to me at the front of the mind when you had Trout and Ohtani deciding this whole tournament is they're on the friggin' Angels together.
yeah.
Like, why aren't they in this position in the postseason? It's ridiculous.
Well, proof that even just two superstars are not enough on a baseball team to be complemented with good to average players. It's just not enough, which is very fascinating because for a while in the late 2005 through 2010, the Angels won the division every year, seemingly, and they did it in a very weak division at the time. And now the division has gotten so much better, but they've managed to keep those two guys. But I think I would very hard for me to comprehend that if the Angels were out of the playoff picture, which I don't think they will be because of the new playoff format, a lot of teams are still in it. I don't think Ohtani would be traded, but could you imagine the payday you could get for Ohtani at the trading deadline? For the haul you could bring in for a guy like that can maybe take you into the postseason and deep. I mean, you could empty out someone's farm system for that.
Well, this is where I wish you could trade draft picks because you don't have to empty the farm system. You could trade future draft picks, which is how the NBA does it. And you're out of drafting, but I would love to see some numbers on the baseball draft and having a first round pick and how much of that is if you don't have one, then you're kind of screwed, or maybe you're not screwed if you're good at finding guys in the second and third round. So that's what I wish, because I don't know if a Luciano and Harrison and whomever deal would make it work. It probably wouldn't. I don't imagine that the Angels would be looking at the Giants farm system going like, okay, this is what we want to do. We're going to you guys first. They're probably going to some of these other teams first, like, the Dodgers, just as an example. But the free agent piece of it, I think they need to take what they learned from the Bryce Harper thing. And according to your colleague, Dave Fleming, I heard him on Tim Kawakami's podcast. He said with Harper, he believed it was simply about the highest dollar figure possible. And the Giants just weren't willing to go over what the Phillies did. You learn from that. You learn from the Judge chase. You learn from the Carlos Correa chase. And you just put an offer out there for Ohtani that, is just the winning offer. And that has to be how you get him. Like, let's say that they signing someone or paying somebody that much money sort of hamstrings the ability to find the players that you need to put around him. I think for the first couple years, as you're sort of building the farm system and hoping somebody hits like a Luciano, you're just going like, okay, like the fans are going to be so into this guy that, maybe we are a 500 team, but he is so entertaining and he is so charismatic that the fans just are going to race to the ballpark to see him because he's the biggest star in the game. And then you have to market him as the biggest star. This is one of the things about baseball that people always say is, how can you have a Mike Trout and say that he's the best player since Willie Mays, and then nobody knows who he is outside of baseball? Like, that's a really bad thing, I think, for the marketing of the game. The Giants would need to market the hell out of this guy, because he could give you some runway for 2 or 3 years, and then hoping that some of these prospects come in and maybe the TV deals, you get a little bit more money here and there. But you got to do it, because the one thing that this team doesn't have today is that one player who the fans know is going to stick around. Brandon Crawford is in the last year of his deal. They signed all these guys like Conforto to 1 year and then opt out on the second year if you want. Same thing they did with Rodon last year. It's like Logan Webb-ish is kind of the guy right now. And Logan Webb is great, but he's not Lincecum. And what you need is Lincecum. and you can have Lincecum and Barry Bonds on the team at the same time, I would just pay whatever it took to get them.
Yeah, and that's what the other factor you mentioned is very, very poignant, is that Ohtani transcends being a fantastic and all-time great baseball player in his career so far with his marketability. You know, if the Giants had signed Judge, season ticket sales may have doubled this
Yeah.
year. That's all it would take, and that rule could still be in place next year if the team uh, does it. But as the Angels have proven, it takes more than just one or two superstars for a team to be competitive. You need to surround them with a great supporting cast. And I think that's why the Giants would not be one to go all in for any kind of trade deadline. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with
For
you about
anything like
that.
that. And you save all your you save it up, and here's what our battle plan is as we go into the winter meetings, as the offseason happens. What are we going to do here to possibly land this guy? What will it cost us? And what would we get back? Advertising. That's one of the big reasons why the Angels signed Albert Pujols, was to get them on get Angels baseball on billboards all around Southern California. It's getting Shohei would be as your franchise face for years as he becomes your superstar that people come from around the world to come see at Oracle Park. The Japanese dollars for the rights, the TV rights coming in, advertising from Japan. All these added things are taken into consideration for what it would cost to bring a guy like that in, and what does it entail, and where do we see ourselves after the honeymoon 1 or 2 year period after you sign them? Do we have the guys that are ready to go? Is Harrison pitching now? Luciano up? What have we got here that's clicking right now? Is Casey Schmidt a superstar? Is he turn out to be something that the Giants have known for a while, that he could turn into this sleeper and turn into a great player? So you have to look down the line, and I think Farhan's got this fantastic team that can foresee not only what's going to happen this year, but let's look down the next couple years. And this is what our game plan is. This is how we're looking down the line with 24 Giants, 25 Giants. This is who we have locked up, and here's the direction of the game, and where the money is going to be. What's the cap going to be as things progress here? I think he's got all those things figured out, and that's why you got to have a guy like Farhan that understands and games the system like he does.
Yeah. All right. Couple other things before we get you out of here. You've been so gracious hanging out here. Let's ask the Brad question. How did it work getting the Giants back on the Reno airwaves? And I don't even understand why they were gone from the airwaves prior to that. Like, how does that work? What's the inside scoop on how that thing works, where you can actually, bring the team back to a market on the air?
Well, the last time we had a Reno affiliate was 2017, and I think the call letters were KBBT up in, I could be wrong on that, up in Reno, and the Giants were on an old school hip hop station of all things.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a rare thing, and
that would have been my favorite station in Reno.
Yeah, exactly. It was right up your alley. And the guy that was running the station called me in the off season after the 2017 season and say, I just don't think our format's going to be able to keep Giants baseball on the air. And it's unfortunate because I am a huge Giants baseball fan. And so we talked about some of the possible ideas, maybe of a sister station coming on, and they couldn't do it. And none of their music formats could support it. And with much of media the way it is now, and over the air terrestrial radio, there are limited number of ownership groups that own multiple stations. So it kind of handcuffs you in terms of who you can reach out to. So there are 5 major ownership groups in the Reno area that own radio stations, and we struck out on all 5 of them going into the 2018 season. Rinse and repeat for 2019, 20 and 21 and 22. We just couldn't secure a station. Last year, we actually had a station that was contemplating carrying Giants baseball. Ownership was in Las Vegas. They had a Reno station. They wanted to do some Giants baseball. If they could only commit to once or twice a week, and that wasn't just going to cut it. because we wanted some consistency up there. And then this past off season, one of the groups that we reached out to called us to renew interest, and they was the Evans Broadcasting Group up in Reno, and they have a country music station that simulcasts on the AM dial, 1300 AM, KCMY, and they wanted to put Giants baseball on the air. And so, as it stands right now, we got the deal done within 5 days. All Giants games will be on 1300 AM in the Reno area. All night games will be on simulcast on 93.7, I believe. Let me get the sheet here. Simulcast on their FM, and let me look this up right now. It's actually 102.5 FM. So 1300 AM for all the games, and all the night games will be simulcast on 102.5 FM. And I believe there's also a simulcast on one of their HD2 stations. I don't have that number right now, but that's kind of how it came about. And, we have such a big, and that was one of the big priorities that the Giants and KNBR wanted to put together, was to get the Reno market back, because we know there are so many Reno fans, Reno Giant fans up there. Everyone knows Mike Kruko, that's his residence. He's up there, and every year we talk about Reno, and he says, DC, whatever I need to do to kind of help make it happen, let me know, because everywhere I go, people are asking me, where can we hear your games? How can we hear your games? And he would give them the short answers. We just can't get an affiliate right now. But this year, Kruk has been doing a great job. He spoke to ownership, and part of the deal, he's been on their sister stations to kind of warm up and welcome Giants baseball back into the Reno area. He couldn't be more ecstatic, because Mike doesn't do all the road games, so he's back up in Reno, and now he can get into his car and he can just simply turn on 1300 AM rather than have to search on XM or have to dial it up on the app. So it's a win-win for everybody. We could not be more pleased to fill a void that was the Reno market for Giants radio.
Awesome. Okay, last thing for you. This is more of a, you are a veteran of this game here and what you do. Do you have this, like, are you feeling the same butterflies that you always feel? Like, where are you with your career, as far as, like, just being excited that we're getting back going again?
Yeah. This is my 22nd or 23rd year of doing this. I spent 16 with the Angels, and this is my 6th or 7th with the Giants. So, Giants, every year you get excited about baseball as just a pure fan. And going back to work, so to speak, with the best announcers in the game, in my book, um, it's just something I look forward to. And I'll tell you, there are times, as just to give you an indication of how fun it is to work with the group of broadcasters in our circle. There are times where we have off days, either at home or on the road, and you're like, I love the off days. Don't get me wrong, but I could do another game right now. And that wasn't always the case. Trust me. I mean, the players feel the dog days with summer. And everyone in broadcasting feels the same thing too. When you start hitting these really hot and humid cities on the road, and you're just like, your body clock is out of order because of all the time changes. And look, the game itself, Giants baseball, spring training, everyone in every camp around the majors is optimistic about their team. Even if you have a team, you're a follower of a team that's not supposed to do well this year, you can't help but be excited, because it's always a big what if, and it's a fresh renewal. I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna have a lot of fun again this year, so I don't expect any changes. To answer your question in long form, not making it short, yes, looking forward to Giants baseball coming back.
And interestingly, for Giants fans here, the start of the season, the beginning of the season, is Thursday,
Yeah.
March 30th in New York, 10 a.m. start.
Yep.
For Giants fans. So you have to be up early on Thursday morning. For those of us who get to work at home like me, it's actually pretty cool, because I can have the game on in the background. Yeah, so you to check out the radio broadcast a lot of times, and we have to find a solution for this, which
Okay.
I hate that we don't have this solution, and I think I understand why, but I would, especially it's more about these national games then, because when you watch the Giants on Bay Area, NBC Sports Bay Area, you get to hear the commentators that you're accustomed to. But like if you were listening to a national game, I want to hear my radio guys. Why is there not like a button I could press to sync the radio immediately with the TV? Like there's there's a solution out there for this because there's really like I think we're spoiled out here with
Yeah.
the team that we have, and it's so great to hear these guys after all the years because it is a lot of times for baseball. This is why Vin Scully was such a legend. Like if you were a little kid listening to the Dodgers, when you're 50 years old, you're still listening to the same guy.
Yeah.
And like that's so tremendous, and to have the longevity of the guys that we get to listen to, and Kruk and Kipe, the best friends still doing this together, like that is magic.
Yep.
And we need. I just want to listen to them more than instead of and no shade against some of the national announcers or some of
Sure.
the, but I also just enjoy the radio broadcast in of itself
Yeah.
just because that's what I grew up on, listening to Hank Greenwald and when all the games weren't televised. So I don't know. There's something out there. Someone needs to fix that. I can't believe that
Well,
we don't have a solution.
let me give you a tip here. If you have the MLB app or MLB.tv and you watch it online, there is an audio toggle option that allows you to listen
Oh,
to a radio overlay of the video. That is, as far as I know, that is not translated to the MLB app on either Apple TV or Fire Stick, however
right,
you want to
right,
watch it on
right.
your TV. But if you're watching on well, it used to be only on your like desktop or laptop, where you could toggle and choose Giants radio feed over the broadcast. And then last year, I believe it was the first year where they started allowing that on the app, where you could choose the different audio feed. Now, what sometimes will happen is if there's a Sunday night game for ESPN, they'll also give you the option of putting ESPN Radio's national broadcast, and sometimes I think they'll just restrict it to the home radio as an audio option as well. So sometimes you may not have a choice of both radio broadcasts on a national game, but it is out there, and who know? And I don't know this for a fact of whether or not they've opened it up even more going into this season. We'll just have to wait and find out next week when we open up the season in New York.
There you go. That's great news. All right. So really appreciate you jumping on. Where can people find you if they want to follow you on Twitter or wherever else you may be?
I'm on Twitter at 415DC. I'm pretty dormant during the off season with a couple things here and there on my mind, but during the baseball season, I like to promote a lot of the upcoming like pregame guests or stuff that's happening in game or stuff that like one of the things we got into big last year was John's introduction into the Wordle world. That was a lot of fun, and I remember my tweet was like, "John Miller is learning Wordle on the air right now." And the response was unbelievable. You would have thought that we said that John had become just was announced as the Pope. It was like it was fantastic. So follow me there on Twitter. That's the best way to do it. But Garrett, thanks for having me on anytime. I love talking baseball. I love talking pro sports with you. Good luck with the rest of the. I'll see you out of the ballpark. Let's do.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh
make that
no.
happen.
My kid, my oldest, he lives about a 5-minute walk away from the park. So we both said that we're gonna go to more games this year for sure because I can just park at his spot and then walk over and it's great. One more thing before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Is there a notification through an app? And I should know this. I don't know why I don't know this. But after a Giants game is over, I just want to listen to the rap.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an app or is the KNBR app or whatever KNBR uses to where once the rap is about to start, a notification comes to my phone and I can just pop it open and listen to the radio version of the rap?
No, as far as I know, that isn't there, but that is a fantastic idea.
That's
That's-
what I want because even if I
okay.
watch the game on TV, I want to hear the rap because
Yeah.
it's like the last time you were on, I think we compared it to the TNT NBA show. Like those are my guys. I want to listen to those guys break down the game and cut jokes on each other and
Yeah.
make whomever go first with their picks, and like that stuff is the magic, right?
I
And
oh
I
yeah,
would
I completely agree. I mean, it could be argued that the rap is the most popular part of our broadcast.
No, I love it. So yeah, I would love. I just wish, and maybe I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's KNBR tweeting the time cues of, oh, the rap is coming up. Click
Yeah.
on this, and we can that would be great because sometimes I just the game is going on, and then I forget, and then I come back and I turn it on. I'm like, oh, it's over already.
Yeah.
bummer. So that would be,
No, I think that's
as
a
a
great idea.
downloadable podcast, that would also be cool.
Even if you put it, if maybe the KNBR app had it on notifications, like if you do get the notifications from them,
Yeah.
that would be a great idea to put it on there.
All right. There you
Um,
go.
yeah, and it's just to squash another question I know I'm going to be getting here in the next month or two is that we don't control. I know everyone wants to see the wrap back on NBC Sports Barry on the post game show. Unfortunately, we don't control that part of it. That's more of an NBC decision. And right now, the cameras aren't in there. Not to say that they wouldn't be back; they were taken out for the pandemic, for use for other things. But in terms of getting that back in the format, I know that's a big thing that a lot of people love watching the rap, and I get it. But right now, the only way to do that is just to listen on the radio.
All right, the rap is my favorite thing to do or listen to while I'm doing the dishes
Yeah,
late in the evening. And now the games are going to be going, 20 minutes faster, so
I know. It's great.
it'll be even earlier. So that'll be great. All right, thanks again, Darren Chan. Amazing. Just not only just the fact that you work for the Giants, but that you were a Giant fan and you have so much knowledge historically of the team. I don't know if anyone can actually calculate this, but I think that even probably makes you better at your job just by knowing so much about the franchise and the team and radio and everything. So again, thanks to Darren. So for Darren, Brad, have a fun vacation. Brad will be back next week. I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.